Arizona outlasts Alabama. I feel like I'm like a Survivor fan for anybody who watches that show. I'm like, they outlasted, they outplayed. Did they outwit? I don't know. But this was another weird Alabama game after the last three that I've now seen them play very good teams and essentially be right in it or even leading the game at halftime. In this one, they were trailing just barely by a point. But this is kind of the pattern, right? They led Purdue by 2 at halftime. They were tied with Creighton. They're down 1 to Arizona. In the second half, they just seem like they run out of steam and the better team pulls away. That's my read on it. Did you also come away with that takeaway?
Yeah, I mean it was Alabama running out of steam. And like I said in the preview, I mean Arizona was going to go on a run in the second half. And I didn't know if Alabama was going to be able to punch back, and they didn't. That run ended up being what, 19-2, which was a little bit higher. I wasn't expecting Alabama to jump out to that big lead in the first half. They had the first punch in the first half right out the gate. I think it was like 11-2 or something like that. But Arizona's bigs were just better than Alabama's bigs. And we talked all about the guards. I mean, Sears and Caleb Love had a relatively poor game. When Sears has a poor game for Alabama, especially, down the stretch, it's not going to be pretty. Other guards stepped up for Arizona, which was good. So, I mean, this is a top 3 team in the country. So it's going to happen where it's going to be a punch counter punch, and Arizona's counter punch in the second half was much larger than any punch that Alabama could throw at them in that first half.
Yeah. I don't know. I find myself feeling like the more interesting takeaways from this game or the more interesting observations are on the Alabama side than the Arizona side. And I don't know if that's, I don't mean that as slight to Arizona in any way, but I feel like we knew Arizona was good. They kind of did what I would expect a good team to do in this game and pull away from a team that we don't know if they're that good. Alabama's talented. They're also 6-5. I mean, they're currently still in the top 10 on KenPom. They're 9th, according to Ken Pomeroy. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games. They're 6-5. I mean, that's kind of crazy to say. I still don't know if they've beaten an NCAA tournament team. And by all accounts, metrically, they're a top 10 team in the country. Arizona, to me, impressive that they were able to pull away comfortably in the end from a game where, 1, they trailed early in the game, but 2, only 4 made threes on the game from a team that I believe is a very talented shooting team. I don't think they're going to win a lot of games this year when they go 4 for 17 from 3, but at the same time, it's good to know that they can beat a team as talented as Alabama, even on a cold shooting night. It speaks to everything else they can do.
Right. And I agree with you on the Alabama front. I think we could talk, and we could talk right now about Grant Nelson almost had the same exact shooting line from 3 as the entire Arizona Wildcats basketball team. 3 for 15 from 3. You could point to him and say he shot out Alabama out of this game. I mean, he kept putting them up, and every single time you go, why? Like, I get that he can shoot threes, but why is your 6'11" center taking 15 threes in a college basketball game?
Yeah, let's talk through this a little more. So he took over, this was like 30% of his attempts on the season in one game tonight. As you said, he was 3 for 15, so not like he was hot or anything. But on his career, man, he's a sub 30% three-point shooter. He's 29% on his career. He shot 27% last season at North Dakota State. Not on a crazy number of attempts. I mean, 92 attempts total on the season. He's already at 56 at Alabama. That makes sense in a NATO system. You would expect that to rise a little bit, but this guy is not a guy that has proven capable of making them enough to shoot 15 in a game. That's absurd.
No, and you look at Grant Nelson's, just looking at his line, because I was ripping my hair out when every time he jacked one up at the end of that game, but he's their center. He was 4th on the team in rebounds and had 15 of their 43 point attempts as a 29% or 20% or whatever 3-point shooter. Like, what was he doing? And I get it. He was out there. Umar Balo's in the middle. Keishad Johnson sometimes defends in the middle, but like you've got Pringle out there absorbing fouls, uh, you know, defending Balo, and Grant Nelson is just kind of on offense chilling on the perimeter. He took 4 shots inside the 3-point arc.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. And it was clear like there was intent to make Arizona pay for having a traditional center and beat them from outside. But that was clearly a battle Arizona was willing to live with the results on. And obviously it worked in the long run. So I had this conversation with Brian last night. We were doing the Duke Baylor recap. You can go watch that on the channel. And I remarked that with Baylor, the more I watch this year's version, I kind of am losing belief in the Scott Drew system. And I know that's a little bit of a harsh, I guess, takeaway because Baylor's very good. They're very talented. But I feel like the more and more I watch Baylor teams that just have like replacement level guards trying to fill the elite roles of the Jared Butler and the Davion Mitchell team, like, right? They want to play a true center and a bunch of guards. And this year's team is the least talented version of those guards. And I think it's notable that this year's team looks like it's going to take a step backwards. I kind of feel the same with Alabama right now when I watch them, where it's like, okay, NATO, it's just going to do the NATO thing where they shoot 43s a game. And if you've got the second overall pick in the draft, then great. If you've got like really, really talented 5-star guards, then great. This year's team, like Mark Sears is a very good player. I have significant doubts on everybody else in this roster. Like, I have not been super impressed with Estrada. He seems like he's hit a little bit of a cold spell. Rylan Griffin just has not taken the jump I expected. He's been in single digits in almost every single game this season. And then in the front court, it's like, pick your guy that night, but none of these guys are going to be like even all SEC honorable mention type players to me. So it kind of feels like the system itself, I know works, but you need the talented players to fit the system. And that's where I think this year's Alabama team falls short.
Yeah, it's you need the talented players. Outside of Sears, there's not really a player on this roster where you look at them and go, that's a guy I want taking, well, even 6 threes a night, let alone 15. The only player on this roster last night that was making threes was Sam Walters. He went 3 of 5. You take his 3 of 5 out of it. They shot 5 of 35 from 3, which 8 of 40 is bad. 5 of 35 is what, 15% or something like that from 3. And they were getting to the line at a pretty decent clip in this game because they attacked the rim. Just do that and try and force Arizona's hand. Like, you shot 26 free throws, which was a pretty decent number for a college basketball game, 26, especially for a team that loses. They were getting to the line, forcing fouls. They got both Larson and Caleb Love into foul trouble. But want to know who had 0 fouls in this game, which is crazy to me?
Who?
Umar Balo.
Wow.
The center had 0 fouls in this game. They just like they were. It was the guards were fouling. Love, Larson, Bradley, Keishad Johnson had 3, but they weren't attacking Balo at all. He stayed on the floor for 30 minutes in a game where we knew he was going to dominate the interior if he stayed on the floor. Got 12 rebounds. Like, he looked, even though it wasn't necessarily, jump off the box score numbers, like, you watched this game, he looked like the most dominant force in this game. And then he had that little move. I texted you about this. He got the ball at the elbow, wide open, and did like this little spin move up into a foul.
Yeah.
And I think it Pringle's 5th.
I think so,
Pringle's
yeah.
5th. Yeah.
Yeah, big moment. Yeah, that's the Alabama front court. I'm gonna like pick a bone with them all season long. I just hate it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to Alabama fans. I'm sorry to the roster, NATO. It's everybody involved in this. I just like anytime you have like 4 guys and any given night you don't know which one is going to show up, I hate situations like that. Like, and I get they're all talented. There's upside with every single one in various ways. But I just think they would be so much better served if one of these guys clearly emerged as the guy and earned a 30-minute role. And maybe that'll happen by the end of the year. But I don't like that you're just guessing which one is going to show up any given day. Now the counter to that is like, yeah, they have depth of talent, and it's good that if the first 2 guys on the list aren't good one night, you have a third guy to turn to. Not a lot of teams have that, but I think they really, really need somebody to step up and just win the lion's share of the minutes there. The one counter I would have to everything we're saying on Alabama, playing devil's advocate here, they shot 8 for 40 from 3. If they make 5 more threes, they win this game. If they make 5 more threes, that would mean they shot 32% from 3 in this game. That's 4% lower than they normally shoot on average on the season. So you could make the argument this was just a crazy cold shooting night for Alabama. And if they shoot anything close to their average on the season from 3, they win this basketball game. Do you buy that argument, or do you think that's ridiculous?
I would if they made those threes. Like, it's one of those things where if you're not making, and neither team was making threes, maybe it was the rims because Arizona shot poorly from 3 as well. But if, like, at some point, I understand shooters shoot, but if you're not making anything from 3, do something else.
Yeah.
And we've seen that too with like Creighton. As soon as Creighton can't make threes, they lose their games. And you watch those games, and Creighton has a better front court, which makes it more frustrating. I think like they have a better center than any player for this Alabama team. We assume in Kalkbrenner, but I mean, Alabama also wasn't making interior shots at a high clip either. But they only took 25 of them. So they shot what? 14 of 25. So
yeah. It's weird. I agree with you. It feels like they're a one-trick pony. Talented basketball team, gonna win a bunch of games. Anytime they just have a nuclear shooting night, like they're gonna win. They're gonna win that game. But you're obviously susceptible style-wise to a night like this, and I think this team has even less counters than the last few Alabama teams have had. Like at least last year, if it was a cold shooting night, it's like get the ball to Brandon Miller, let him figure it out. This year's team, I assume they have to do that with Mark Sears, and Sears is a good player. He's given it all that he has, I think, the last few games. And like I said, they've lost 5 of 7, which I don't think bodes particularly well. One last note on Arizona, then we'll get out of here. I keep measuring Arizona mentally to the best teams in the country, the quote-unquote top tier of Purdue and UConn in my mind. Purdue, to me, looks like the number 1 team in the country, especially now that UConn took an L at Seton Hall last night. The thing I would say has me thinking Arizona might have the highest upside of that group of teams, maybe the highest upside of any team in the country, is that I think Purdue and UConn both feel a little more one-dimensional. Like Purdue has the best player in the country. They've got a star point guard next to him, and then they've got a streaky third option, whether it's Jones or Lawyer. They're kind of 3-headed monster. I think UConn, we saw them, you lose Klingon, they got nowhere else to turn, right? Tristan Newton's great, but Klingon's that important to that team. It's Klingon, it's Newton, Spencer and Caravan kind of filling that third who's going to go nuclear role for me. That's UConn. Arizona's got 5 capital D dudes to me. Like any given night, it can be Balo, it can be Larson, it can be Boswell, Johnson, Love. I think Jaden Bradley can come off the bench and give them spurts. KJ Lewis looks like a real guy. I think that this team is more complete than any of the other teams that are in the quote unquote upper echelon of college basketball this season. Do you agree with me on
that? It's tough because I still think Purdue's the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And so like saying that a different team is more complete. I think with Arizona will never be in a position where you look at them and go, they're out of this game. Because we saw last night, they can put on a 19-2 run.
Mm-hmm.
in like the drop of a hat in a game where they're struggling. They can just put on a 19-2 run. They can dominate every facet of the game, right? They attacked the rim, got more fouls, had more free throws, out rebounded Alabama by 10. They forced 18 turnovers to just 14 for themselves, had more steals, can block shots. So I agree with you there. Like they can win in so many different ways, where with Purdue, like there's certain things that they're going to dominate in, and certain things they have to overcome, which is why when we talk about Purdue, we always talk about like Marquette is the perfect counterpunch to Purdue. We thought Arizona was going to be a tough challenge for Purdue. Northwestern, who forces a lot of turnovers and has a star guard, we thought we didn't necessarily think because of the talent they were going to be a tough test, but like looking back at it, we should have been prepared for that.
Yeah.
Because I do think that there are certain things like Purdue has gaps in the wall, has gaps in the armor, and Arizona doesn't necessarily have those same gaps, even if their floor might be a little bit lower than Purdue, or they might not be as consistent. And we saw that, right? The minute I say Caleb Love is here to stay, puts up 3 of 11, 0 4 from 3. Good thing is he got to the line 7 times, shot 100% from the line. And when he wasn't making shots, he put up the third most on the team. Like it wasn't like he was leading the team in shot attempts. So I still think that even in this game, got 7 rebounds, got to the line, and didn't shoot this team out of this game, which is something that would have happened at UNC last year. So
yeah, he played 25 minutes. That's the luxury Tommy Lloyd has, right? And I think Lloyd's done a fantastic job this season. I still just really trust him as a coach. I like every adjustment that he makes. I think he knows when to push what buttons, and he's got a great roster. So I'm sticking with the quote unquote most complete. I just think, who knows if that's going to lead to them winning a national title or not. They still can be susceptible to a cold shooting night. Like they've let teams control games for 60% of the game, just like Alabama did tonight. But I think I do. I think it's the comparison of like almost watching like an NBA finals where one team has the superstars and then the other team is just like rock solid 1 through 8. And I don't think Arizona has a first-team All-American. I don't know if they have a second-team All-American, but I wouldn't take 1 through 8 from any other team over this team's 1 through 8. And last little note, the 8th guy, Creas, we've talked about him, how he's been really, really good at times this season. Now he's got 2 straight games of single-digit minutes. It looked uncomfortable in this game against the athleticism of the Alabama front court. I thought he had like a nice catch at one point where he just faded away from a pretty open layup, and I don't think Tommy Lloyd really went back to him after that. Are you worried about Creas at all right now?
No, I mean a little bit, but not much. Look, in this game, are you going to put out a freshman, like a 7'2" freshman center, against a front court that we've already discussed we don't like? Or are you going to keep Umar Balo out there for 30 minutes because he's not fouling, and then play small with Keshad Johnson at the 5 when you can, understanding that the front court you're playing is not that strong? I think that part of the reason why Creas didn't log double-digit minutes in this game was simply because they didn't need him to. Like he's like you said, he's a luxury. Purdue's a little bit different. I feel like Purdue, it's a trust thing. And Tommy Lloyd, maybe not to the degree that Mark Few doesn't, but like he's probably going to pick and choose his minutes. We saw him play pretty well against Wisconsin and Colgate. And so like I think he's going to be fine. It's a learning curve. They're going to need him come March because they're going to need another guy that's, for as good as Keshad Johnson is, he's not a center, like a stereotypical center. So they're going to need someone who's taller and bigger and more imposing in the paint to spell Balo in some of those games come March. So I'm expecting Creas to earn, probably 8 to 12 minutes a game through Pac-12 play, and hopefully that's what they're going to get out of him in March. But the back-to-back 6 minutes, I'm not too worried about. The game flow of this game, I think, was just probably the wrong type of game for Creas to come into.
Yeah. Balo's much better player right now, right? That's not a harsh indictment of it. But if Balo's not in foul trouble, there's no reason you would objectively choose to have Creas in the game over Balo other than to get him some reps. And I am going to be curious watching it because Arizona has played 5 teams outside the top 100 on KenPom. Creas has been in double-digit scoring 4 of those 5 games. He's scored 3, 2, 2, 2, and 6 in their 5 games against top 100 opponents. So at a certain point, like, is he capable of impacting a game against better teams? I still think we need to see that. You're right. He is an integral part of this team come March, and God forbid, we've seen foul trouble take a superstar out of a game before. Having Creas off the bench prepared to impact a game like this would be huge.
And he came in for 6 minutes, right, and immediately grabs a couple of offensive rebounds, draws a foul. Like, he impacted the game, even if you look at a stat line, he was like 1 for 3 from the floor.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think they're going to need him to get more minutes, more reps. It's just kind of in games like this against opponents that you really want those good wins from, when your star center is not playing himself off the floor, why pull him off the floor is kind of the way I'm viewing that one.
100%. All right, quick turnaround for Arizona this weekend. They get Florida Atlantic on a neutral, ending their. I mean, this is a week from hell, man. In 7 days, you go Purdue, Alabama, Florida Atlantic. What a schedule! That'll be a fun game to watch. We will have a preview of it up on the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. That is Connor Hope from Heat Check CBB. I'm Greg Waddell from Sleepers Media, and we will see you next time.